Imagine being trapped, alone and frightened in a dark, claustrophobic space where nobody can hear you and nobody can help you. The following real-life stories are exactly that. Here are 10 terrifying cases of people buried alive. Number 10 is Naeyc Perez. In July of 2015, 16-year-old Naeyc Perez from La Entrada, Honduras, seemed to die from a panic attack. She collapsed suddenly, foaming at the mouth, and was declared dead 3 hours later. One day after the funeral, her husband and mother were visiting her grave when they heard screaming coming from inside the concrete tomb where she was buried. A cemetery worker also believed that he heard screams coming from the grave, so they called for help and the family broke into the tomb with sledgehammers. And what they discovered was terrifying. The glass window on Naeyc's coffin was cracked. Her face was scratched and her fingers were bruised, as if she had been trying to escape. It's possible that her heart temporarily stopped or caused a cataplexy attack, making her only seem dead. Her body was rushed to the hospital still in the coffin, but doctors were unable to revive her and she was reburied for good. Number 9 is Natalia Pasternak. In the spring of 2015, 55-year-old Natalia Pasternak went for a walk in the woods near Tienda in Russia with her dog and her 80-year-old friend Valentina Gorodetskaya. They were collecting tree sap when a brown bear came out of nowhere and started to attack them. The two women tried to fight off the bear, hitting it with branches and even their bare hands. The bear struck Valentina in the back, but eventually turned its focus to Natalia and began clawing at her head and legs, nearly tearing her apart. Thinking that she was dead, the bear buried Natalia under a pile of dirt, leaves, and branches. It was likely that its plan was to keep her body hidden and therefore save her for a big meal later on. The authorities later found the two victims, including Natalia, whose body was bloodied and only partially visible. Consider this story next time you go camping. Number 8 is Angelo Hays. In 1937, 19-year-old Angelo Hays from the village of Saint-Quentin-de-Chalais in France was in a terrible motorcycle accident. He hadn't been wearing a helmet and he was thrown off his bike head first into a brick wall. The doctors couldn't find a pulse and he was therefore declared dead. Hays was so badly disfigured that his parents weren't even allowed to view his body. However, just 2 days after he was buried, the insurance company had his body exhumed after they had discovered that Angelo's father had taken out a life insurance policy on him for nearly 200,000 francs. And when Hays was dug up, they were shocked to find that his body was still warm. Amazingly, he hadn't been dead, but instead in a coma the entire time. It was this tragic event that inspired the invention of the security coffin, a coffin with a supply of oxygen, food, a toilet, a library, alarm bells, and a radio transmitter. Something that you may want to consider for yourself one day when you die. Number 7 is Essie Dunbar. In the summer of 1915, 30-year-old Essie Dunbar from Blacksville, South Carolina, was declared dead after suffering from an epileptic attack. Essie's funeral was arranged for the following morning at 11 a.m., so that her sister, who lived out of town, had enough time to get to the cemetery. But after the lengthy ceremony, she still hadn't arrived, so Essie, in her wooden coffin, was buried 6 feet under. Her sister then arrived shortly after, and convinced the ministers to dig up the coffin so that she could say her final goodbyes. But when they reopened it, instead of finding Essie at rest, she sat up and smiled. The ministers fainted out of fright, and the remaining guests, including her sister, ran away in terror. Essie got out of her grave and chased them through the town, insisting that she was not undead. She went on to live to be 77 years old. However, not everyone in the town was convinced that she wasn't a zombie brought back to life. Next time you're at an open casket funeral, it may be best to pay your respects from afar. Number 6 is Stephen Small. Stephen B. Small from Illinois was 39 years old when he was kidnapped by Danny Edwards and Nancy Reish. Small was a married father of 3 and heir to his family's media firm. At 12:30 a.m. on September 2nd, 1987, he got a phone call from a supposed police officer, luring him to one of his properties with a fake story that it had been broken into. At 3:30 a.m., the kidnappers called his wife and demanded a $1 million ransom. The kidnappers locked Small in a plywood box and buried him under 3 feet of sand. The box contained a jug of water, a flashlight, and some candy bars, and was outfitted with a PVC pipe to give him oxygen. However, the pipe was too long and not wide enough to supply him with enough air, and Small quickly suffocated to death. By the next morning, authorities had tracked down Reish and Edwards, who led police to Small's buried body. Both were sentenced to life in prison. Number 5 is Octavius Smith Hatcher. In January of 1891 in Pikesville, Kentucky, Octavius Smith Hatcher's son, Jacob, died when he was only a baby. Deaths amongst infants was pretty common at the time, but Octavia became incredibly depressed after his death. She became bedridden and got more sick before she ultimately fell into a coma and was pronounced dead on May 2nd. Since the weather was getting hot and bodies were not embalmed back then, Octavia was quickly buried. Not long after she died, more people in the town began to fall into comas from this mysterious illness. But unlike Octavia, everyone else eventually woke up. Her husband James had her body exhumed just in case, and was distraught when they opened her coffin and confirmed his worst fears. Octavia had still been alive when she was buried. The lining in her coffin was torn to shreds, and her nails were broken off and bloody. She had died buried underground with a look of terror still frozen on her face. Number 4 is the Indian Girl. On October 25, 2014, a 6-year-old from Sadali in Uttar Pradesh, a northern state in India, was lured from her home by a married couple who were her neighbors. The couple told the girl that her mother wanted them to bring her to another village nearby. Instead, they brought her to a sugarcane field where they tried to strangle the young girl to death. Thinking that she was dead, they dug a hole and buried her in a pit. However, townspeople working near the field saw the man, woman, and child go into the field, but thought something was wrong after the couple emerged without the girl. They searched the field and were able to find the pit on time and dig the girl out. She was unconscious but still alive. The girl was taken to the hospital to recover, and once she regained consciousness, identified the neighbors as the culprits, who were also suspected of killing her mother, who had also gone missing. Kind of makes you wonder if you really know who your neighbors are. Number 3 is Mina El Hawari. On May 19, 2014, 25-year-old Mina El Hawari traveled from her home in Cadenet, France to Fez in Morocco to finally meet a man that she had been talking to online for months. After a day together, Mina became ill and collapsed before becoming unconscious due to undiagnosed diabetes. In a panic and thinking that she was dead, he decided not to call an ambulance and buried her in his garden instead. When she didn't check out of her hotel and hadn't been in contact with her family, her parents filed a missing persons report. The police searched the man's home and found muddy trousers and a shovel before ultimately discovering her body in a shallow grave. But the coroner found that Mina wasn't dead when she was buried. She was simply in a diabetic coma. She was still conscious and suffocated to death under the pile of dirt. The man confessed to burying her and was charged with involuntary manslaughter. Number 2 is Buried for Luck. In 2011, in Russia, a 35-year-old man convinced his friends to bury him alive. He was certain that, as an extreme test of endurance, spending a night buried underground would bring him good luck for the rest of his life. So, the man dug a hole in his garden and got into his makeshift coffin that was outfitted with pipes that were meant to supply him with air. He also brought a blanket, a bottle of water, and a cell phone with him just in case. Once his friend buried the coffin in nearly 8 inches of soil, the man called him to say he was fine. However, when his friend returned in the morning and dug up the coffin, he found the man dead. Police believed that the heavy rains overnight would have blocked his air holes. But disturbingly, this was not the first time this has happened in Russia. Just a year earlier in the Vologda region, another man wanting to overcome his fear of death had a friend bury him alive, only to be crushed to death by the dirt. Sometimes trying to overcome your fear doesn't always pay off. And number 1 is Alice Blundin. In 1674, Alice Blundin of Basingstoke, England, became ill while her husband William was away. On July 15th, she was given poppy water, but after she fell asleep, doctors couldn't find a pulse and she had no signs of breathing. So her family had her buried before William could get home. But just a few days later, children playing by her grave claimed to hear screaming. After the voice was heard by others, Alice's grave was reopened. Her body looked beaten and covered in scratches and bruises. It appeared that she had been alive in her coffin, but was now dead. Her grave was resealed until the coroner could confirm her death the next morning, and a guard had to keep watch in case she woke again. But the guard wasn't much good because in the morning, her burial shrouds were found torn to shreds and her face was even more bloodied. As it turns out, poor Alice was buried alive not once, but twice. Thank you all very much for watching this episode. On the right, you'll find 2 of my most recent videos that you can press or click on your screen right now if you'd like to watch some more. And other than that, I wish you all a good night. Sweet dreams.